Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got a Tuesday night slate in the NBA tonight. 5 games to choose from here, Nate. In this one, we're taking a look at the Cavs and the Miami Heat taking each other on in Cleveland. Also got another game video and our player props up for you, so make sure to like and subscribe. Continue to follow along with us all season long. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where you can check out all the great written content we're talking about here and more. And also use that odds finder tool that we have. You can make sure you're getting the best juice back on all those bets you make in the NBA this season with those U.S. sports books. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 5-game slate and then talk Heat and Cavs.
Yeah, first meeting of the season between the Heat and the Cavs. Right now, Miami's plus 5.5, and that's a low total as you would expect with these teams at 211. Then the Lakers are on a back-to-back after resting LeBron and AD. Still no official word. They're plus 3.5 now at the Knicks. That's been growing because the Knicks have been off since Saturday. And we don't know on those Lakers guys. The Hornets plus 11 at the Bucks. If you remember in January, earlier this month, they stunned the Bucks at home by about 30. Clippers minus 3 at the Bulls after punting a game at the Cavs. They were red hot before that, and I think that's a third bonus pick for us. But the other game we break down, Pelicans are plus 6.5 at Denver. Denver back home after also on 2 days rest, like the Knicks, after Jokic lost that MVP battle to Embiid. But we're talking Heat Cavs here. And like I said, first meeting of the year, or second meeting, but Miami didn't really show up in that first one at Cleveland. Didn't have Jimmy, Hero, Depot, lost pretty handily. I mean, that was definitely before they got it going, and they're still a little wonky. I mean, and not the most reliable team on the road. Certainly not reliable if Jimmy Butler's going to sit. He's questionable perpetually. It's a quad bruise. I think he can go. It's certainly if he wants to. And with the Heat, it's kind of like I look at with the Warriors. I often talk to you about, Josh. Is like, is this a circled game? Is this a calendar game, if you will? The Cavs are right ahead of them in that 4-5 spot. As it stands right now, beating the Cavs gets them closer to potentially hosting a playoff series against the Cavs. And that is absolutely vital for both these teams, who are just much, much worse on the road versus at home. And I trust Miami when they have their full squad and their full motivation, definitely to cover 5 points. And you look in their last 4 against Eastern Conference playoff teams, 3-1 straight up, 3-1 against the spread, covered in a small loss against Brooklyn. If you count Atlanta, they didn't cover in that one. They lost. Atlanta gave up 70 in the first half. I don't know what to make of that. So, and I mean, you look at the total too, 211. I think with Tyler Hero playing, the Heat offense is a little more reliable. That pace has actually been kind of fast, other than that crazy game against Dallas, where it's an 89 pace. Of course, every time those teams get together, they can't have any possessions. Their defense, which has been number 1 on the road all year, has slid on the road for sure. 119 defensive rating these last 4. And I mean, Cleveland's offense, I'm certainly impressed with at home. Won 5 of their last 6, 121 offensive rating. Donnie Mitchell averaged 28 points per game against Miami in his last 5 with Utah, and then didn't have to play much in this blowout. And the Cavs actually gone over in 7 of their last 10 at home. So I'm leaning a little bit towards over 210, if that's where it is. I mean, I guess the public betted up one. But I also like the Heat to just hang around in this one and maybe win it.
Yeah, I don't really love talking about the total here. I mean, it should go over, man. No one here is going to take an under on 210 in today's NBA anyway. Even when you do have 2 teams that are seen as the 2 best, 2 of the best defensive teams in the league right now. But if you look at some more of the recent sample size, I think the over is a bit of a better play here, just because of the fact that they've both been sort of a little bit less than their sort of average on the season over the course of the last, basically since January, essentially, especially in the locations in terms of away for Miami and at home for Cleveland. I mean, it's really just over the last 7 in general. I mean, they're both a lot, like they're both teams that are in the top 10 in terms of opponent field goal percentage and limiting that. But even in the last 7 or so, they're both in the bottom 15. The Heat all the way down to about 21st. But I think it does come down, like it's a Miami Heat team that if we're going to talk about them, It's actually, if we could avoid talking about Miami moving forward, Nate, then that would be helpful for me because it takes so much fucking research. It takes so much who played in this game. How many games in a row did that person miss before they came back in this game? Was it Depot? Was it Hero? Was it Lowry? Was it Bam? Was it Jimmy? I don't know. So like it took me a long time just to get any kind of take on this Miami Heat team because of how much you have to dive into them. And really like this is what it comes down to for me is the lineups that they have in when they have Kyle Lowry, when they have Bam, when they have Jimmy, when they have Tyler. Really those four guys are the key. When they have those four guys in a lineup, then their net rating in terms of possessions per 100 is all the way up to 7.4, depending if you throw depending if you throw Caleb Martin in there or if you throw Max Strus in there maybe instead of Martin. Either way, you've got those four key guys for you, and you're talking about a net rating of 10 plus 10 or better. In fact, plus 17 and a half in roughly 127 minutes this season for when it's basically 4 or 5 of those guys. So if they're in there, then I like them to be able to hang, especially with this Cleveland team who they've been relying on Donnie and Darius Garland to really be the entire, sort of crux of their offense. They have been fast breaking a little bit more as well over the course of their last 10. Both these teams have, not necessarily increasing their paces, but definitely both getting out into transition more frequently. Both teams, in the top 5 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, like they gobble it up. You don't get second chance points on these teams. But, that all that said, like I think the pace is there enough with the way that they'll be playing in transition against each other that hopefully you keep things moving enough to get to that over. But more importantly, even if the game goes that way, I think the half court defense of the Miami Heat has proven to be as good as it needs to be as well to be able to hang in a game like this, where I'm not saying Cleveland's necessarily like in any way struggling on defense, but they have become somewhat more of like an offensive team to a degree at home, and that's just because of the way that they've been really also getting to the free throw line is a huge part of it, averaging about 4 more free throws attempts a game over their last 7 games at home, or 6 games at home, whatever, right around there, than they have been all season. So attacking a bit more. Obviously, when Donnie Mitchell's in there, they're going to get a few more free throw attempts as well, as he's averaging like 9 so far. So I think there's some over stuff to consider with the sort of waning defense. I think I don't love even betting on this game necessarily, like I said from the jump, but I would prefer to take Miami at plus 5.5 in a game where like I still think they're capable of handling teams on the road. It's not like they're that. I mean, they are better in terms of the record at home so far this season, but I mean, when you look at the stats just in the month of January as well, it's a little bit more close to the same in terms of what they're doing at home and on the road. And I think this is a good spot for them to be able to cover 6 points.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland's still a little brother. And I mean, they've won 5 of these last 6 at home, but really haven't faced full teams. I mean, the Clippers, like I said, punted. The Suns without anyone. The Bucks without Giannis. They lost to the Dubs, who rested their entire starting lineup, which was just a weird one. But then before that, lost to Brooklyn and Toronto at home. They're 4-4 against the spread their last 8 at home. And strangely, not even a good record at all with a rest advantage. 4-8 against the spread. And they're coming off a blowout against the Clips and a lot of rest lately. Miami, of course, wonky rest because we don't know who's in and out. But I do look at Bam dominated the matchup last March, 30-17 with no Jared Allen. I think he's still, the way he's playing right now, wins that matchup. And Hero was a pretty efficient 22 points off the bench to get Miami that win. He missed this earlier one. I think those two guys and their ability to work off each other will get Miami the win if Jimmy Butler plays. And that's always the caveat that we say, when a guy like Jimmy or Jokic is questionable, like maybe wait until we get that final injury report.
And that's always the key, and that's the annoying part about betting on the Heat. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit wonky with the lineups as they have been all season. So you definitely want to see if Jimmy's in there. I think he's a huge part of it. I think he's a huge part of being able to get to the over as well. To be honest, I know what he does on defense, but right now, also, especially the way that Hero has been struggling since he came back from injury, roughly like 7-8 games ago. He's been struggling mightily, shooting 40% from the field, 23% from 3, not even making 2 threes a game right now for Hero. And if he's going to continue at that rate, then you're going to need Jimmy Butler to go to the line like 12 times to get to the over the way that he has been out of late. So hopefully he plays for that over and for Miami to cover. And if he doesn't, I don't feel nearly as comfortable about any of the things that we have said in this episode. So I think it's really crucial to obviously check on what he's doing.
And then, Pelicans plus 6.5. It was 7.5. And I don't know who's betting on the Pels right now. But I guess they know the theory that they played them close in New Orleans, the Nuggets, a 99-98 win for the Nuggets the last time these teams met. And the Nuggets have, to be fair, lost their other 3 games in their last 4, with Joker sitting in 2 of those. I mean, the entire starting lineup sitting in one of those, and Joel Embiid just winning that matchup against Joker on Saturday, and that being the other loss. But now they're back home. Lost 15 straight at home with the Joker, and then they lost to OKC without him. They've covered in everything since Christmas, except a weird, against Orlando, we often see teams overlook them, or that was a extra rest, and on a back-to-back against Minnesota. So 6-7 points isn't really a lot when you look at Denver winning by 9 points per game with a rest advantage, winning by 11 points per game, 6-2 against the spread with 2+ days off, and they've been off since Saturday. And you look at their recent, I looked at the game log after a road loss when they come back home, 2-1 against the spread their last 3. Had a close win over Charlotte, Miami. Those were a long time ago at this point. And then the most recent one was that 30-point win against the Clippers, where the Clippers punted by halftime. And the Pels, I mean, they can't afford to punt anything. They've lost 8 straight. They've fallen to 8th, but I just don't think they have the firepower to keep up in this one. In that span, they're scoring just 111. You look at their last 5 road games in that span, scoring 107. Rough offensive rating. Never a good 3-point shooting team, but even worse. Brandon Ingram's been back in there, but he is rusty as all hell. Scoring 17 points per game, 39% from 3, and 100 at the line for a 75 offensive rating. And he's still chucking at a 44% usage rate. So it's kind of thrown a wrench into their offense. I mean, not that they don't need him without Zion. They absolutely need him. But he's a rhythm guy, and I don't think he's in rhythm yet. And the last time they went to Denver in March last year, they needed 38 from BI to keep it close, to send it to overtime. They beat Denver at home. The previous one, I mean, that was when Jokic's supporting cast was utterly ridiculous. Devon Reed was starting in that game. Yeah. So, but I mean, you just look at the key numbers in terms of New Orleans being worse on defense on the road, giving up the 5th highest percentage of points off 2s, which is trouble against the Joker and the Nuggets. Joker's, like, I saw a tweet last night that was like 60% of his assists are leading to a dunk or layup in the restricted area. And it's just like easy pickings. Pell's also giving up the 9th most paint points on the road. And interestingly, dead last in second half points allowed on the road. So even if this one is close for a while, Denver certainly could pull away. They've got MPJ back. Jamal Murray is questionable, but he's been resting for 2 days, so I don't think he needs to rest here in this spot. And I just look for the Joker to continue to dominate the rest of the league, even if he didn't dominate in that matchup against Embiid.
Yeah, dude. I mean, in their last 8, they're averaging 102 points a game, are the Pellies. Like, you have to score 125 to beat the Nuggets at home at this point in the season. We've seen that. There's like we talked about before we started recording. You were like, here's the summary of the Nuggets Pellies. The Nuggets are at home. End of story. Like, it is that easy at this point, and I think I'm happy to that they were sort of only won by 1 point in their last matchup against the Pellies, if that's the reason that people are betting on them. They had their whole squad. They were winning by double digits in the fourth quarter, were the Nuggets, and then they just kind of like stopped playing. And it was interesting because they only had at one point they had a 1-point spread in that game because they thought Joker wasn't going to play, and that spread stayed at about -1 for Denver, where I gobbled it up, and then they only won by 1 point because they were hemorrhaged points in the fourth quarter. Did the Nuggets, but I think there's something to be said for only being able to score 102.5 points, having the worst defensive rating, obviously, offensive rating in the league over their last 8, and like you said, the 3-point shooting is just awful, man. It's bad at this point, and it's all dependent on guys like Trey Murphy, Devontae Graham, whoever, just getting wide open. And the way that they get wide open is you have to either double Brandon Ingram closer to the baseline where he wants to be and get that shot off, or you've got to double Zion going going to the rim. And you don't have to double either of those guys at this point because BI's killing them. Zion's out and continues to be out. He won't even be reevaluated for another couple of weeks. We're probably not going to see him as a starter in the All-Star game, which is absurd. But that's where we're at right now. The fifth least 3-pointers made. Obviously not getting to the free throw line either. The fourth fewest free throw attempts over their last 8. In terms of the assists, they're not necessarily like the worst diming team in the world, but when Zion is in there, they're averaging like 4 more assists per game, and really just taking care of the ball as well. Where normally guys like CJ McCollum and company are in pretty good control. They've had really good guard play throughout in terms of controlling pace and things of that nature, but still turning the ball over about the 4th most in the last 8 games. So there's just it looks like a team that's just playing a lot of really young guys without a ton of experience, and that's because that's what's happening. Joval, he's been doing Joval things, but I think he's also unlocked a lot when you have Zion in there. When you look at the amount of the field goal percentages that he's putting up when Zion's in, much better. Obviously more threes for Joval when he's in there as well. Just wanted to throw that out there. So I think it's key that they have Zion. I know this sounds ridiculous. Zion is the key to all of this. There's just not enough from them at that point, in terms of, like I said, the offensive rating, the second chance points is something that they need. We know about controlling the paint. I mean, the identity of this team is control the paint, and really, play solid enough defense that, you can basically score. They should be expecting to score around 120 a game when they have, CJ, BI and Zion in at the same time. That's what their net rating is. That's what their offensive rating is. That's how many points they're scoring when they have those 3 guys in their lineup. When you look at their 3-man lineups, I mean, that lineup is incredible. It's one of the best 5 in the league if you don't worry about how many minutes it's playing. With those 3 guys in the lineup, they've got, a top 5 net rating. And so without them, like I said, everything that they do well, second chance points in the paint, and even, assisted 3-pointers, things of that nature. It's just all covered shots that it's a much more difficult offense. And I haven't even really said anything about Denver because what do you want me to say? Like there's nothing that they can't do against this team right now. The Pellies haven't been necessarily hemorrhaging points the same way. They've been playing it a little bit lower, but that's because they know they don't have the offense right now, and they're playing everything in the half court, no transition. And I think Denver actually has been getting out in transition a lot over their last 10 games with when MPJ and Michael Porter Jr. and Bruce Brown are all out there. They're 5th in fast break points over their last 10. So this is gonna be a tough one for the Pellies, and I would bet this all the way up to like -8 for the Nuggets, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing we also can say is just a Joker appreciation party. He at home in 23 games has a 140 offensive rating and is plus 345 this season. So as long as he's going to be out there on a little extra rest, the Nuggets should just be eviscerating this team. I think we'd love the over if Zion was playing because we expect, Joker to just continue to do his thing, averaging, 33, 12, 10. On 72% field goal shooting, his last 5 against Joval and Nola. So, I mean, he's still the MVP. He should continue to assert that. And I just don't think the Pelicans can keep pace in this one unless Brandon Ingram suddenly goes from ice cold to red hot. And even then, I mean, there's just so much depth on this Nuggets team that I don't think they can keep pace.
No, 100%. I mean, I would consider even potentially an under on that Pelicans total just because of it's at 234.5 right now. I don't trust the Pellies to necessarily come along for the ride on offense. Like I said, 102.5 points over the course of their last 8. Even if you put them at let's say 110, I don't know. That's what we're really talking about here in terms of getting all the way up to that total. They got to get a bit more, although I do expect them to get blown out. So I'm not worried about that. And that's why my favorite bet in this one, no matter what, like I said, is Denver -5.5 or 6.5. Love it. Like I said, might even just alternate it up to about -8 and get a bit more juice on that, as I'm feeling pretty comfortable with them handling things tonight and not letting things go. I mean, they already handled them in a game that was like a boring Sunday game, and then they just let them come back at the end. And I don't see that happening here for the Pellies and that lack of offense. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first NBA play-up prop for tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Nuggets rolling at home, and the Joker's obviously going to play a big role in that after he lost that individual matchup against Embiid, lost the game in Philly on Saturday. Now he's got a little extra rest, and I'm actually not taking the points here because I'm a little concerned about New Orleans not scoring and this kind of just being a walkover. But even in a blowout, the Joker can put up a ton of peripherals, 10.5 rebounds or 11.5 if you want better odds there, or 21.5 rebounds assists is even money. and he's averaging 12 and a half rebounds, 10 assists, shooting 72% his last 5 against New Orleans. I talked about at home, he has a 140 offensive rating, which is the same as those ones against New Orleans. And he's topped this assist rebounds prop in 9 of his last 10 at home, the exception being a blowout win over the Clippers. So I am a little concerned that this is a blowout, but I don't think New Orleans would do what the Clippers did, which is yank their starters in the first half and just like give Joker the excuse to just sit down. And still, even with that outlier, averaging 12 boards, 12 assists in those last 10 home games, the Pels offense has been awful. So I think you lean on the rebounds even more than the assists here. I think we're probably predicting more of like 12, 13 boards and then the 9, 10 assists that he averages. Is they're allowing the third most rebounds per game in their last 5 roadies, shooting under 47% from the floor, and Joker just cleans up a lot of those misses.
Yeah, I support it, and I like we were saying, I trust there to be a lot of rebounding opportunities when they're playing this Pellies team that's been the worst offense in the league over the last 8 games or so. So yeah, 102 points a game for the Pellies means a lot of misses and rebounds for Joker. Get those up to like 14 or 15, and you've got an easy assist total that he needs to get over there to get to the 22 combined. So I think it's a good opportunity to get some pretty good juice on his bet there. I'm gonna go with my boy who I've already called my favorite Nick of all time, or at least in the top 3, Jalen Brunson. They have a point guard, adult on the floor. His points and assists is at 30.5 points on FanDuel. You get that at minus 111. If you want just the points, it's 23.5. A little bit worse juice there, minus 120 on those odds. But they're playing the Lakers, and that means points, and that means bad defense. Lakers are going to be on a back-to-back as well. The Knicks have been off since Saturday, and yeah, the Lakers have been playing a lot of games lately, actually, including that one that LeBron and ended up sitting the last one. But last 2 games, the last games that he's had Jalen there with 2+ days off, which is what he's facing right now. We're talking about 44 points versus the Bucks with 7 assists as well on 50% from the field and a 40% usage. That was a basically your turn, my turn game with him and Julius Randle. And then playing against the Suns, which was a short-handed game that they played against them, but the Suns did they basically just blew him out at that point. It was like a Sunday morning. 33% usage in that one, 24 points in just a limited amount of minutes that he needed there as well. And then you look at versus the Bulls, the last time he also had 2+ days off, 30 points, 7 assists, 29% usage rate, shooting better than 50% from the field as well. So just really efficient games from him and a really solid shooting with high usage rates, because in games that they really look to hang with some of these good teams as well, that they really rely on Jalen. The Lakers are not good against point guards. They allow the most points per game over their last couple of weeks to point guards, about 30 or so a game, 29ish. And they've been playing at that fast pace, second in pace, yet allowing about the 3rd or 4th most points per game this season are the Lakers, and on 0 days rest for the Lake Show, which they are, allowing 127 points per game. So you can expect a bunch of points to be hemorrhaged by them in this one, and baby Jalen Brunson to really take care of things for us.
Yeah, I mean, he's needed that extra rest, especially lately, right? Because he's dealing with the hip or whatever else has kind of limited him. And then his last 2, he seems to be getting right. Nice, like 29-point game against the Nets, solid defense. And I think, yeah, he easily gets 24+ points here, and he's been diming up as well, playing that 2-man game with Randall. I'm sticking with stars here. We said we liked the Clippers after they punted in Cleveland on a back-to-back. They had won 5 straight previously, and Kawhi Leonard has just been carrying their offense to a 137 offensive rating as a team. He individually had a 154 offensive rating in those last 5 wins, just unheard of. So you're not getting much juice on 26.5 points, not getting much if you add the rebounds either. So maybe you want to jack it up 1 more point. I think he gets at least 28 tonight, so I'd be fine with over 27.5. He's averaging 30 and 6.5 boards and nearly 5 assists in those 5 wins. And Chicago, hey, they play some shootouts sometimes. Either way, they're not the most efficient defense on the wing for sure, allowing the 7th most points, 2nd most assists to small forwards in their last 15. And they are tied for the highest defensive rebounding rate by opponents when they're at home. So they're not really crashing the glass. There should be some good rebounding opportunities. You want to tack on 6.5 boards for Kawhi on these points. I think he gets there as well and continues to carry the Clips probably to a win. They're only minus 2.5 here.
Yeah, I think he knows he can get his, really, to be honest, and I think he's happy to play down low a little bit more against this Bulls team that, I mean, we know what they do down low, which is nothing, and Vooch is really just more of a turnstile down there than anything. So I don't think there's much in the way of opposition that can keep Kawhi out of the paint as well. So I like adding the rebounds. I really like the points as well. Like you said, I think this should be much closer to like 28. So if you want to add a point and get a bit more juice there on an alternate for Kawhi's points, I'd be with that as well. Finishing things off here, Nate, let's close it out with Scary Terry. I'm going to take an under, which could be scary for you to do a 22.5 points because he just dropped 39 against Milwaukee on January 6th, shooting better than 50% from the field. That was the game that was by far the biggest surprise of the season. I think we can all agree at this point, where the Hornets blew out the Bucks. So maybe there's a blowout factor for Scary Terry that the Hornets, no, I think it's the opposite effect. I think the blowout factor is in effect for the Hornets to get steamrolled after what they did to the Bucks last time in Milwaukee. So, I mean, he even had 26 the previous home game versus Milwaukee on December 3rd. That was a game where Giannis and Drew played just 25 minutes each, and Rozier played the 36 minutes in that game. So I think things are a little bit bloated here, Nate, and you were talking about this earlier. In his previous 4 in Milwaukee specifically, 16.5 points a game on 41.5% shooting. Probably a lot more likely to what you should expect being from Terry tonight. That would be a little bit more likely. Milwaukee's allowing the 4th lowest field goal percentage and the 2nd in free throw attempts to their opponent at home in the last 2 weeks or so, which is really when they've started to get their guys actually back and playing. And they allow the 8th fewest points per game to shooting guards over the course of the last week or so. Drew Holiday doing work. So I think it's a good opportunity for him to get a bit more shut down, for them to realize if Scary Terry doesn't even score 23 points, this team has no shot of hanging with us, as we're probably about to drop like 125 on them. So I think that's why you can expect the blowout factor to help you there and them to be focused on Terry Rozier.
Yeah, let's fade him after he cooked them last time. I mean, Drew was either sick or dealing with an ankle injury. I mean, he played in both those games that Terry went off, but he was not at full strength. And now he is, and the Bucks defense is lights out once again. So 22.5 points. I think you tack on some rebounds too if you want. He doesn't really board up either.
Yeah, and the Bucks, I think, like we said, will be running and gunning, not be giving too many opportunities for those rebounds. So maybe they have another sort of 70-point first half to show them what's up right now. But that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us as we look to stay hot on these player props. Until we see you next, happy betting.